Hello everyone, it's Robbie Rhino here. Before we get into today's video, I'd like to say that there's a giveaway going alongside today's video to celebrate the start of the Independence season. So to have a chance at winning a small season pass, which is worth 2,000 gold, all you have to do is enter your gamer tag and platform in the comments on this video. But please note, if you already have the season pass, if you've already bought it, or if you've won it elsewhere, please don't enter, as you cannot win it again. If you wish, you can upgrade this small season pass to the ultimate pass yourself after it has been credited, which means that you will be saving yourself 2,000 gold. The winner will be drawn on the 15th of June at 6 PM GMT, and the pass will be credited on the 16th of June, so the following day. Good luck to everyone, and thank you so much for your support, and enjoy the new season. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I am going to be looking at one of the returning G.I. Joe tanks. So this collaboration with G.I. Joe has been back into WoT Tanks console since the 7th of June, so a week ago as I'm recording this video, and you were able to pick up the tanks in bundles and separately until the 12th of July, so hopefully this review will help you decide whether to pick up this tank or not. And which tank, you are asking? It is this one here, the Arctic H.I.S.S, which is an Era 2 light tank for the independent tech tree in the Cold War game mode in WoT Tanks console. So we're going to have a little look down here on the WoT Tanks console website at the price of the Arctic H.I.S.S. The base price of just the tank on its own, and it's 13,000 gold, so it's very expensive, and you can also get it in one of the expensive bundles, so you're going to have to think long and hard whether you want to spend your money or save it for anything in the upcoming season, which is released in a few hours from now as I'm recording this video. So in today's video I'm going to be looking at the statistics of the Arctic H.I.S.S, but also comparing it to the AMX-13 SS-11 TCA, which is a French Era 2 Cold War light tank for the Western Alliance, and that's a premium tank that was released a short while ago, and it compares very well to the Arctic H.I.S.S in terms of concealment, mobility, and it also has the multiple weapon system that the Arctic H.I.S.S has had introduced since it was first introduced into WoT Tanks console, and they also have 4-shot autoloading ATGM capacity. So I'll be comparing both of these tanks. I'll also show you my commander and equipment setup, and I have 3 gameplays for you in the Arctic H.I.S.S to show off how this tank behaves. So in terms of my spreadsheet here, if you haven't seen me do one of these before, if it's highlighted in green, it's the better statistic, red is the worst, yellow is a talking point, but in this case it's my statistics with the updated characteristics from my commander and equipment setup. And if I've left both of the boxes blank and it's just the black text, that means that it's just the same statistics. So we'll get stuck straight into the bonuses of the tanks here. Now, the Arctic H.I.S.S, you can see here, you can get a 10% XP bonus, a 65% silver bonus, and a 10% commander XP bonus. So the XP and the commander XP is worse than the AMX-13, but it does have 10% more silver bonus at 65% silver, so this thing does rake in the silver, especially if you are having pretty damn good games in this tank. Hit points wise, it's good news for the Arctic H.I.S.S. It has 100 more at 2,400 hit points, and it also has 10 meters more view range at 550 meters. It's also good news for the Arctic H.I.S.S in terms of its mobility. It is a lot better than the AMX-13. It has an engine horsepower of 600, a power to weight ratio of 27.19, a top speed of 72.5 kilometers an hour forwards and 34 kilometers an hour backwards. The hull traverse is the only thing that holds this back in comparison to the AMX-13. It's only 2 degrees a second less than the AMX-13's 40 degrees a second at 38 degrees a second, and the turret traverse is the same as the AMX-13 at 40 degrees a second. And bear in mind that you can improve this with use of the mobility equipment. And now we get on to the fun part of any tank, and that's the guns on both of these tanks and the ATGM launcher. So The AMX-13 has a 75mm 6-shot autoloader, dealing 1080 damage per clip if you penetrate every shot. However, the Arctic H.I.S.S has a much more competitive primary gun in my opinion. It's a 90mm twin cannon gun. It fires APF, SDS as standard, heat as the premium option, and HESH as the third ammunition choice. In terms of its penetration, it wipes the floor with the AMX-13. It has much better penetration on its standard 309mm, 320mm of heat penetration, and 180mm of HESH penetration. If you can use that on lightly armoured tanks, you can deal 320 damage of that, and it's 240 alpha damage on its standard rounds for this 90mm. In terms of the shell velocity, it's got damn good shell velocity on its standard rounds, or damn good for a 90mm, I would say, at 1260 meters a second, which is better than the AMX-13's 1000 meters a second. As it has heat as the second ammunition, or the premium ammunition choice, it is slower than the APCR on the AMX-13, only by a little bit, at 895 meters a second. And the HESH rounds on the Arctic H.I.S.S are much better than the HE on the AMX-13 at 830 meters a second. In terms of the ATGMs then on both of these tanks, they are both 4-shot auto-loading ATGM capacity on these tanks. The shell velocity on the ATGM for the Arctic H.I.S.S is much better than the MX-13s at 296 meters a second. However, the penetration and the alpha damage of the ATGMs is worse than the AMX-13s at 418 millimeters of penetration and 1100 alpha damage. But yeah, bear in mind that the ATGMs on the AMX-13 are sort of best in class. They are 660 millimeters of penetration and 1210 alpha damage at Era 2 of Cold War, which is absolutely insane. However, there is good news to come in terms of the ATGMs, and I'll discuss that in just a second. In terms of the gun handling then, you can see that there's a lot of red on the Arctic H.I.S.S. I'm guessing it's due to it being a slightly bigger caliber gun, and to balance it out because you are able to carry 12 rounds of ATGM compared to the 8 on the AMX-13, so that's 2 full magazines on the AMX-13 and 3 full magazines on the Arctic H.I.S.S. So aim time on the Arctic H.I.S.S 2.3 seconds, accuracy 0.35, DPM is 3,273, and the DPM on the ATGM launcher is 3,102. And you can see that this is a lot worse than the AMX-13's statistics in that regard, due to it being a lower caliber, well, a higher caliber gun, but a single firing gun, I should say. The reload is 4.4 seconds base, and that's, not too far off the 9.5 seconds it takes for the AMX-13 to reload its whole clip at 9.5 seconds. So I've left that blank because you can't really compare the single shot to the autoloader in comparison to its reloading capabilities. In terms of the reloading on the ATGMs, it's 55 seconds to reload 4 shells in the Arctic H.I.S.S, whereas it's only 38 seconds on the AMX-13, so it's a lot longer to reload the ATGMs in the Arctic H.I.S.S. However, it has a better intraclip reload at 10 seconds between ATGMs compared to the AMX-13's 15 seconds. In terms of its ammo capacity, I should say, it's a lot better than the AMX-13. It carries 80 rounds of ammunition and 4 extra ATGMs at 12 rounds. It also has better gun depression at 8 degrees of gun depression and better gun elevation at 30 degrees of gun elevation. So with my commander and equipment setup, you'll see these statistics here. I'll just tell you my commander and equipment setup now for you on the Arctic H.I.S.S. I run advanced concealment, gun stabilizer and traction system for the equipment, and for my commander skills I run 6th Sense, Born Leader, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Run and Gun, Snapshot, Camouflage Expertise, Muffled Shot and Situational Awareness, and that gives me an aim time of 2.21 seconds, an accuracy of 0.24. My DPM's gone up on the 90mm to 3.4, 5,000 and on the ATGM to 3,190. My reload has gone down to 4.22 seconds and the ATGM reload has gone to 52.73 seconds for the 4 shells. And bear in mind that you can use the multiple weapon system, so you can switch between these just by holding the ammo select button wherever you have mapped that to on your controller. So you can compare this now to the AMX-13 with my updated commander and equipment setup on that tank. You can see that it still does have a better gun handling, better DPM. It has obviously a shorter or a shortish reload on its 6-shot autoloader and a much shorter reload for the 4 shells. But obviously there's good bits and bad bits about both of the tanks. So if I'm just sort of giving you a brief overview of my opinion on the Arctic H.I.S.S versus the AMX-13, the AMX-13 has the slightly better concealment than the Arctic H.I.S.S. It does make slightly less silver due to that silver bonus being 10% less than the Arctic H.I.S.S. The Arctic H.I.S.S does have 100 extra hit points, extra view range, much better mobility, and that does improve when you use the mobility equipment. The primary gun on the Arctic H.I.S.S is much more usable than the 6-shot autoloader on the AMX-13 because of the alpha damage, the penetration. It just works a lot better and it feels a lot nicer and you pen a lot more shots. The speed is better on the ATGM, which is a nice thing for the Arctic H.I.S.S. However, it doesn't have that fantastic penetration and alpha damage, so you do have to choose your shots or choose where you shoot a little bit more carefully. But you do have more ammunition, more gun depression and elevation, but there is something to note in terms of the mobility of the Arctic H.I.S.S, but we'll discuss that in the gameplay as it's easier to show you than to tell you over an Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to head over now to the gameplays. I have 3 for you, and we're going to see how this tank behaves. So you're joining me on Fisherman's Bay in the Arctic H.I.S.S. I've cut out the start of the battle because it's just me trying to spot for my team, but as you can see on the minimap they've all gone to the town, so I'm just trying to stay in the middle here in Fisherman's Bay, spot out tanks towards the south and try and get some ATGMs into them at the start of the battle. Fire one of my first ATGM or my first ATGM and I ammo rack the M103A2 and save the clip to share or maybe use for a compilation. I follow that up with an ATGM into the side of the MOBAT and finish off that tank as well. So that's 2 tanks taken out in very short succession, and that's a great place to start in terms of this replay because it just demonstrates how good this tank is now that it has the multiple weapon system. So when it was first introduced it didn't have the multiple weapon system and it just felt a little bit underwhelming, as quite a lot of the tanks did then, like the BMP line for the Eastern Alliance. That light tank line felt a little bit underwhelming, and it's just been given a new lease of life with the multiple weapon system, and I can now, recommend this tank if you can afford it. I still prefer the AMX-13 SS-11 TCA, that's just my preference due to the extra concealment and the better DPM if you can make the sort of penetration work. But I guess for the majority of players I'd say the Arctic H.I.S.S is probably the better choice because it has that better alpha damage on the primary gun. It's a more effective primary gun than the autoloader, and if you do use like rapid loading, that kind of thing, you can improve the DPM to a pretty nice level on the Arctic H.I.S.S, and you should penetrate quite a lot of your rounds with the standard APF SDS rounds, as you see me chewing up a Leopard 1A1, and it's really enjoyable playing tanks with ATGMs at the moment because there's so many Leopards on the enemy teams and you can just butter right through them. You don't need that exceptional penetration like the AMX-13 has when you're playing against Leopards, and that's why I think the H.I.S.S works so well at the moment, but it will still be a pretty good purchase nonetheless. So you can see here that I've just stuck around the middle for the start of the battle. I tried to spot out, haven't got any assistance, but we're just making our gun work, and that's something that's great about this tank and also the AMX-13 is that you can make the gun work and get your direct damage in. If you try and spot for your team and they're not shooting what you're spotting, you can sort of push the tempo a little bit in the light tank, use the concealment and get forwards and do the damage yourself. This does have a slightly larger profile than the AMX-13. It's harder to sort of hide in foliage and that kind of thing. It's a little bit less sneaky, but it still has a pretty good concealment rating, and you can hide yourself on quite a few places in the maps. and you can do things like this: come up, put an ATGM into a MOBAT, and then use your 90mm twin cannons to finish them off. And it's a very good damage dealing light tank. One thing to watch out for is the sort of handling of the tank, and what I mean by that is the tracks don't cover, as you can see, the whole of the hull of the tank. So when you stop on ridgelines or just stop quite abruptly, your tank dips forward due to the weight of the hull over the tracks. So when you're sort of stopping and aiming, you have to sort of give it that second extra than you would on another tank maybe, and it's not as good for snapshotting, and it does mean that you can miss a few shells due to the sort of the nature of the tank and the shape of the tank. But we've come up here at the end of this game, we get an ATGM into the side of that Arctic H.I.S.S on the enemy team, and now we're just going to go in and see as we can get as much damage as possible at the end of this battle. We switched to an ATGM there into the top of the MOBAT, and now we're just going to go to town with our 90mm. We've got hit points to spare. We're just going to try and do as much damage. Trying to fire another ATGM right into the side of that MOBAT there, taking our damage total to 8,446, and we get the final shell in, taking that MOBAT out. And a pretty quick game for where you joined me, but it just shows how quickly you can rack up the damage in this tank. So that's 5 kills, 8.4k direct damage. That's a first class mastery badge. We finish an MVP slot with 1,583 base experience points and just shy of 300,000 silver profit. So that's it for the first game. We're going to head on now into the second game, and I'll talk you through a little bit more about how I like to play the Cobra Arctic H.I.S.S. So we're now into the second game of today's review. We're here on Fisherman's Bay in the North Spawn with the Arctic H.I.S.S. So we're going to see how this tank does, getting a little bit more assistance than the last game, showing you that you can play that sort of scouting role, support role, as well as dealing the damage yourself. So from the North Spawn, we're going to head to the centre of the map and see if we can get some early spots on this centre ridge in the sort of E5 location right in front of me. So yeah, in terms of the Arctic H.I.S.S and how I'm feeling playing this tank, it's been an absolute blast to play, and if the AMX-13 SS-11 TCA wasn't in the game, I'd probably pick this thing up now. I'm not sure whether to get it. This is a rental to be able to do a review for you all. If I had some extra money at the moment, I probably would, because it is a lot of fun and you do make a lot of silver, and it's a pretty sort of unique, funky tank to have in your sort of garage. I know not everyone's a fan of the sort of collaboration with the G.I. Joe and the skins and that kind of thing. They're definitely not historical tanks, but yeah, they are pretty unique, and it can be quite fun to play. And like I said in the previous gameplay, it's different lease of life since it's been given the multiple weapon system. You just have to watch out for your sort of shape of the tank, meaning that you miss some of your shells. As you can see, as soon as you stop, it sort of bobs down and it can be quite awkward. One thing I didn't mention in the last gameplay is the extra 4 ATGMs that you can carry with the Arctic H.I.S.S compared to the AMX-13, and that does come in handy. I've run out of ATGMs in both this tank and also the AMX-13, but those extra 4 ATGM shells mean that you can, or you have the potential to deal a lot more damage than the AMX-13 SS-11 TCA. So you saw there that I carry the smoke consumable, the smoke screen, to block things like that M60A2 coming over the ridge and trying to blap me with an ATGM or a heat or a H.I.S.S shell. I think it carries. That would have been very dangerous for my tank, as I've already lost a fair few hit points at the start of the battle from that M60A2. So we're just floating around this mid-ridge at the moment. We were trying to get some view range out towards the south. We've got some ATGMs into things that are sort of pushing the sides of these ridge lines, and we're just going from side to side on this ridge line. When we see things spotted, just trying to catch tanks out. We're always scanning the horizon, trying to see tanks with the True Vision system, and I always like to start off the battles with the ATGMs, get some big chunking damage out of the way. I find that if you just whittle your opponents down that way at the start of the battle, then it's much easier at the end of the battle, and your 90mm will work much better for you. It's so good to have a sort of primary gun that does feel like it is more useful than the AMX-13's gun. You can make that work, but this one does work at a longer distance. It has a better penetration, a bit more alpha damage, and it just feels a lot sort of nicer to use if you or especially if you play a slightly more passive role. You can kind of snipe in this tank. The DPM still feels okay, although it's not quite as good as the AMX-13. But things like this, where you can just fall back, support your support your enemies, don't do that, support your allies is what I meant to say, from a position like this, whilst your ATGM reloads, and you feel quite useful and you don't have to go in with an autoloader, get up close because of your penetration issues like you have on the AMX-13. So I sort of fall back in between reloads. I'm trying to catch the tracks of the tanks that are cresting that ridge at the moment, constantly checking my reload on the ATGMs, and then I'm just going to try and go in for some assassinations. I obviously can't speak again. This is obviously what's going to happen now from now on when I'm recording videos. So these tanks, or the enemy tanks, are pushing over this ridge line. They're trying to get shots in on my allies. Unfortunately there we fired our ATGM too close to that rock, and of course, as you can see there, the ATGM's on top of the tank. I wasn't sure which one was firing, and it was obviously the left hand side fires first, and now I know. But yeah, that rock took a heavy hit from an ATGM, so now I'm retreating even more. The enemy tanks are sort of pushing over the mid-ridge. They're now coming towards the north of the map, towards our base, and I'm going to try and set up a defensive location on top of this hill. And this is where ATGMs are really fun to use when you're above your enemies, because usually you can just go straight through the top of their tanks and penetrate with ease. And it's kind of like a sort of artillery in Cold War, if you will, coming down from above. And I just have to be careful not to be spotted, so I'm rocking backwards and forwards trying to spot them with the spotting mechanics, but I'm also scanning the horizon for tanks that might be trying to scan for me, because this is a typical location that, well, usually tank destroyers like to sit, but at the moment it seems to be any kind of tank just sits up here, and you can't really guess where the enemies are going. I'm just trying to decide whether to go in now and help my friendly here try and take out this M60A2. However, that tank can take me out in one shot. It has nasty ATGMs, and it's a pretty nasty tank in general, so I don't really want to mess with that. I was hoping that this chieftain might fall back a little bit. I was trying to say fall back then. I don't know why I said help, but we still managed to get the ATGM in nonetheless. My chieftain does get taken out, and I feel a little bit annoyed that I kind of let that happen. I feel maybe I should have been slightly more aggressive, but I didn't want to throw away my hit points, as I feel that I still have a lot to sort of give in terms of this battle, and I feel like I could take this one down if I just play this a little bit more sensibly than maybe I would otherwise, because I'm quite an aggressive player. But times like this call for a little bit more of a passive approach. I'm just meters away from my base. I don't have to go too far to reset, so there's no rush. There's still 50 seconds left on the cap, but as that M60A2 I should say has retreated slightly, I'm going to try and use this dead wreck to keep me in cover, pop some smoke, and I'm going to go into first person here, and that's a great tip to use when you're firing ATGMs or just trying to fire through smoke. If you go into your first person to the sniper mode, you are able to see through it. Other tanks can't see you. A lot of people don't know that, and as you can see here, it's become incredibly effective at taking out that T62M1, and yeah, that's a sort of tip that I picked up from watching other YouTubers. I sort of didn't really think about doing it, to be honest, at the start, but if you pop your smoke there, block any ATGM or any fire coming into you, they can't really tell where you are. They have to sort of blind fire you, and it's just a case of then going into your sniper view, poking forwards ever so slightly so it's just your gun sticking out, and then you can shoot your opponents, and that's how you can get the ambush in that kind of situation without taking fire from the enemy. So we're waiting for our ATGMs to reload. We have 5 of them left, so I'm trying to reload a full magazine. I have 5 seconds left, and I'm just trying to get out of the way of the M60A2, and this is where having that traction system has just boosted my top speed just that little bit more, meaning that I was able to evade that shell from that M60A2. The mobility, although it's better than the AMX-13, it can get you into trouble because of your slightly larger profile and the slightly worse concealment. But now that that M60A2, I keep missing the A, is focused on another tank, I'm going to take my time to fire an ATGM into the side frame and that into the rear of the M60A2, and now we're going to finish him off with a shell from the 90mm, taking that game down. And that's a good victory in the Arctic H.I.S.S with 3 kills. We finished in the MVP slot, 6,965 direct damage, 2,644 assistance, 3 kills like I said, and just shy of 300,000 silver profit again. So we're going to head on now into the third and final replay and see how this tank performs there. So you join me here on Redshire in the Arctic H.I.S.S in the third and final gameplay of today's video, and this is a great map for a light tank. Lots of ridgelines, foliage to get your assistance damage, and also lots of open space for you to be able to flank, use your mobility and concealment and get your shells in and deal damage to the enemy. So we spawned in the north west part of the map, and we've just come to the center of the map to get some view range out, trying to spot enemies that are heading this way, but also enemies that are heading to that brawling or typical brawling location that's located in E9, E0. Doing kind of figure eights on this ridgeline, just trying to spot out tanks that are coming this way, trying to get some assistance at the start of the battle. It hasn't quite worked out just yet. I'm going to go close to this ridgeline here because tanks do like to push aggressively into that little dip below, and if you get close enough within 50 meters you will proximity spot them, so it's always worth doing that just to sort of see the lay of the land and see where enemy tanks are. Going to see if I can get any shells into tanks that are on that ridgeline ahead of me, but I don't want to sit on the ridgeline for too long because this larger profile is quite a tall light tank. It will be seen and you will be penetrated because there's no armor on this tank. I'm thinking about going over this ridgeline and getting a shell or an ATGM into the side of the heavy tank below me, but I feel like it was a bit of a risk doing it in that position. But there's a rock to cover me from the left now, and I've seen this Leopard 1A1, and that's a juicy penetration. Managed to wiggle my ATGM, and we get shot into the side of that Leopard 1A1 there for 1,043 damage, and we've also got a little bit of assistance at 277 assistance. So why do I prefer the AMX-13 over the Arctic H.I.S.S? As I alluded to in the previous gameplay, it's purely because of the profile of the tank. It's a lot smaller, easier to hide and foliage, the concealment is better, and those ATGMs with the penetration I feel are just, you know, a little bit more consistent, and the AMX-13 just performs more consistently for me. But the Arctic H.I.S.S has still given me some fantastic games, and this is the highest damage that I've done in the Arctic H.I.S.S or the AMX-13, so it is capable of dealing you know, massive damage for a light tank. I can still highly recommend this tank, and I might even still get it myself. So great tank. I slightly prefer the AMX-13, but it is a close run competition. So here in this game on Redshire, we are just trying to find targets for our ATGMs. We've seen this M60A2 on that ridgeline. We get a nice shell into the sort of lower plate there, or the sort of front drive wheel of the M60A2, and hopefully we tracked him in place. We're trying to scan the ridgeline to see where he was again, but I lost track. However, we've boosted our damage, and with these 4-shot autoloaders, or ATGM launchers I should say, on the Arctic H.I.S.S and the AMX-13, you certainly can deal the damage very quickly. That intricate reload of 10 seconds on the Arctic H.I.S.S feels really nice with the ATGM launcher. The AMX-13 can feel a little bit slow to get the second ATGM out, and it can get you out of trouble on the Arctic H.I.S.S when you have the 10-second intricate reload and that slightly more penetration and better alpha damage on your primary single fire gun. So we're just trying to get some shells here on this RDF LT on the enemy team. You can see here that the shell velocity is still pretty good on these APF SDS rounds. I don't carry any heat rounds because I find it largely useless against all of the spaced armour, the composite armour and the explosive reactive armour, but I do carry some of the HE rounds to use should I come up against, you know, another H.I.S.S or an AMX-13, something like that, and I feel like I'm in a desperate need of some extra DPM. So popped our smoke there just to get out of that position. We were spotted and we were getting or taking fire from the eastern side of the map. We're going to come over here now and see if we can try and protect tanks that are coming this way from that brawling location. It's looking like we're in a really bad position in this game. The enemy seem to have the control of a large portion of the map, and we're just going to try and take out this armadillo here. I absolutely missed my shotgun there on the armadillo, but we do manage to follow it up with our 90mm and we get the kill on that armadillo, and that's a good kill. Always good to get the enemy light tanks out of the way. The more of them you get out, the better vision you've got and the better chance you've got in the late game. So we're just trying to crest these ridgelines and get ATGMs into tanks that are trying to cross this way. Unfortunately, we lose control of that ATGM and it flies over that Leopard 1A1, which is really frustrating. I think we're going to have another go here. It's a little bit of a slim shot because you're trying to get into his turret and guess where he's going, but we do manage, with the slightly better shell velocity that these ATGMs have over the AMX-13, we get a shot into the turret of that Leopard, and we are now up to 4,299 damage. We see this M60A2 out in the open. He is with his rear to us. We're going to oblige with an ATGM into the rear of that tank, and now we're already up to 5.3k damage, and we're getting the damage in slowly here. We are picking off the enemies, we are chunking them down, but it might be a little bit too late for this battle as we've lost so much of the map, but I'm going to do my darndest to try and take this one down with my team. I'm just going backwards and forwards trying to decide, you know, which flank or which friendlies I want to help out. I'm going to try and get some shells in here to this T-72. I believe I thought I was firing an ATGM there. That's one thing with the multiple weapon system. You've always got to bear in mind of what you have loaded, but it does mean that I'm able to get that reload in on the ATGMs and come in and try and take out this Sheridan. We get a lovely shotgun into the Sheridan, and he does get subsequently taken out by our friendly T-72. We're now getting shot in the side from the enemy Arctic H.I.S.S. Fortunately, he didn't fire an ATGM into us, and we're going to see if we can get an ATGM into him. Again, we miss because of the sort of taller nature of the H.I.S.S. there. We couldn't get our ATGM down on that enemy Arctic H.I.S.S, but he, for some reason, sort of did a stop there. We get an ATGM and we follow it up with a ram kill, which is always nice to get a ram kill in a light tank. And now we're just trying to battle our way out of this situation. We get a kill there on an M60, and then we've got our last ATGM, which we fire into the side of that T-72, taking our damage total to 9,264. We pop some smoke there as the enemies are coming over these ridgeline thick and fast. It's only me, two other light tanks, and a heavy tank left on our team. It's 4 versus 6, and I'm just trying to escape, get a bit of distance, and maybe I can come in from a different angle, but this T-72A knows where I am, and I'm just trying to get some hard cover as I run away in the Arctic H.I.S.S. And this is where, although the mobility is helping the Arctic H.I.S.S, the smaller profile of the MX-13 would have come in handy. I might have been able to escape a little bit easier. We're going to fire at this T-72 here. You can see here that we don't get spotted, so the concealment is still pretty good on the H.I.S.S. Not as good as the MX-13, but it's keeping us hidden in a position like this. And we're just hoping that this T-72 hasn't spotted us, but I think he has. His gun's pointing this way, and it's just me and a light tank left to take this one down. There's a lot of hit points left on the enemy team. I don't have any ATGMs left, and unfortunately I believe that this one is going to be a loss and a bit of a heartbreak. Someone's pinging me, even though I've done 9.5k damage. Admittedly, I didn't do a lot of the damage early on, which you know, I felt like I couldn't. If I did, maybe this one would have been a win, but now we're just going to try and go in, maybe circle someone, get a little bit more damage, and I'm going to see if I can push this damage number over 10k, which is always nice to hit, even though it's kind of normal for a lot of players in Cold War. Coming from my World War II background in World of Tanks console, 10k always feels like a pretty good achievement. So we're going to free aim our shells here on the Leopard 1A1. Even with the good shell velocity, we're still going to miss if we just auto aim and he's not in a sort of direct line to us. We're just going to try and get as many shells in here as we can on the move, try and duke that Leopard 1A1. Fortunately, that building is destructible, which means that we can get our last shell in, and that does take our damage total over 10k. We miss our final killing shell on the Leopard, but it doesn't really matter. That game was always going to be a defeat, but it does show you how much damage you can put out with the Arctic H.I.S.S, even in a loss. So we do lose that battle, but we do pick up a nice profit of 300,000 silver. We do 10,142 direct damage, 277 assistance, get 4 kills, 857 experience, and it's a good showcase of what the Arctic H.I.S.S can do. So I really hope that you have enjoyed the review of the Arctic H.I.S.S. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.